Today, my wife and I are flying on what has been argued to be the world's best business class experience, Qatar Q Suites. But does it still live up to the hype, given that this product is now over 8 years old? Well, today I'll be putting it to the test as we'll be traveling over 22 hours from Melbourne all the way to the other side of the world. Today we'll be trying out seats in both the center section of the cabin, which provides a unique double bed configuration, perfect for couples, and also the window seat configuration, which both are hid away behind doors that offer an extremely private experience. I'm excited to share with you our experience, what seating configuration we prefer as a couple, but also share everything else in between, from the foods that we eat to the type of bedding that you get and how the entertainment selection is. So for today's journey, we'll be departing from Melbourne, flying just over 14 hours to Doha on Qatar's Boeing 777-300ER. During this flight, my wife and I will be seated in the rear-facing center section of the cabin in seats 5E and 5F. We'll be transiting through Doha Airport, where we have a relatively short stopover of just 2 hours before we get onto the second leg of our flight, flying for another 7.5 hours to our final destination in Madrid on another Boeing 777, except for that leg, we'll both be seating in the window seat configuration. Overall, we're talking about just over 24 hours of travel, which if you're traveling from Australia to Europe, then this is the expected amount of time. But I'm hoping that given we'll be flying in Qatar's Q Suite, that this will make the experience much more enjoyable. Now quickly, before we get into the actual flight review, let me share with you how my wife and I are planning to stay connected during our month-long honeymoon, which is thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Air Arlo. Air Arlo offers a range of local, regional, and global eSIMs to keep you connected whilst you're traveling. But their Global Discover Plus eSIM is how my wife and I are staying connected. It allows you to stay connected to 137 countries, all with the same eSIM. And the best part about this eSIM is that it's just not data. You get calls, texts, and data all from one number. For this trip, we traveled across Spain, Iceland, Turkey, and even Singapore, and it worked perfectly. It's fast to set up with clear instructions, and you can manage everything in the app, top-ups, usage, and all. So install Air Arlo free today so you can stay connected whenever you travel, and use my code RaymondLA3 to get $3 off your first Discover Plus eSIM. So the journey begins at Melbourne Airport. The check-in experience was super smooth because we were taking a red-eye flight, so it wasn't too busy, and flying with business class with Qatar at Melbourne gives you access to the Mar Harbour Lounge. This lounge is a fairly reasonable space to spend some time in before your flight, and I'm impressed by the range of seating options and the expansive windows offering excellent tarmac views. The food and beverage offering seems passable, but I opted out of trying anything as I didn't want to ruin my appetite for the on-demand dining experience. We're ready to board, so we head to our gate and find our seats, 5E and 5F today. If you're flying with a partner and want that cozy double bed setup, aim for the odd-numbered E and F seats. They're rear-facing and positioned right next to each other in the center of the cabin. Don't worry if you're next to a stranger, there's also a privacy partition that you can raise. But if you're with someone, these seats are perfect since you're basically side by side. It's not exactly a true double bed, but pretty close. The D and G seats in the center are forward facing and closer to the aisle, so they're not the best if you're traveling with someone as they're just a bit too far apart. If you're flying solo, the window seat is probably your best bet. The forward-facing Q Suites up front offer a little bit more room, but honestly, the rear-facing ones by the windows are hard to beat. You get a great view of the engines and the sky, and they feel super private. If you can snag one of those, definitely go for it. They feel the most spacious and are tucked far away enough from the aisle and doors to avoid that cramped feeling. As I sit down into my seat, my wife and I are offered a choice of drinks, and we both opted for Qatar's signature lemon and mint juice, which was absolutely phenomenal. Each Q Suite has two main components, the seat itself and the extra stool next to you, which opens up into additional storage for your belongings, and you can also be adjusted to be an armrest. There's also a large faux marble surface right in front of you, so there is ample amounts of storage. The seat also has a variety of different controls, with several different power options and even with a HDMI option. The seat details are also immaculate, and I didn't expect the seat itself to be so tall, but I guess if you're someone who's taller, this is probably to your benefit. On your seat, you'll find your Diptyque amenity kit, which today included an essential face cream, nourishing lip balm, perfume, and face masks and socks. The flight attendants did also bring around pajamas and slippers, as this is an overnight flight. Most importantly though, you also have 2 menus available, one for food and one for drinks. Qatar offers a dine-on-demand a la carte menu at any point during your flight when traveling in first or business class. But if you have a preference for a particular option, I would definitely recommend putting in your order as early as possible, as the more popular options do tend to run out. Shortly after boarding, we taxi onto the runway and up into the air we go. Now, my wife does experience motion sickness and she will never choose to sit in a rear-facing seat on taxis and trains. She did experience some motion sickness during takeoff as the plane was climbing to altitude, but once we were cruising, she didn't feel any motion sickness at all. Thought that might be useful to share for those who experience motion sickness. Now, during takeoff and landing, the Q-Suite doors have to remain open, but once the pilot releases the cabin crew and dings the bell, they go around and unlock the Q-Suite doors, and you can fully close it all the way. And honestly, the seat wall is high enough to provide real privacy while seated and sleeping. We opted to have our first meal as soon as possible once we had taken off, as given it was approaching midnight, we wanted to eat and then hopefully get some rest. Whilst waiting for the dinner service, I opted for a glass of champagne because why not, and also snacked on some nice warm nuts. For dinner, I opted for the classic Arabic meze as my starter, whilst my wife went for the roasted pumpkin soup. And let me tell you that whilst the meze was good, the pumpkin soup was on a whole other level. And this was the same for both legs of our flights. So if you can only choose one, I would recommend the soup. For the main course, I decided to have the Black Angus beef tenderloin, and it was phenomenal. I'm someone who already enjoys airplane food, even when it's in economy, but this was just next level. My wife went with the chicken and cashew nut sauce, which she didn't really enjoy as it was a bit on the drier side. I pretty much went all out for this dinner service because I also opted for both the cheese platter and also the ice cream, which I definitely regretted because I was way too full by the end. My wife nearly never finishes her meal, so I always end up finishing hers because we can't let food go to waste. Right, guys? So I always probably end up eating 1.5 mains at least. Shortly after the meal service, we both asked the flight attendants to help us prepare our beds. Whilst waiting, I also changed into the complimentary pajamas and brushed my teeth in the lavatories. The lavatory was not surprisingly very spacious. It had this nice wood finishing with Diptyque products available to be used. When we came back to our seats, our beds were ready, and it truly does look like a double bed. And this is in-flight coziness at its best, and where the door shines most of all, because lying in this whilst both doors are closed truly feels like your own private cocoon. The mattress topper made the seat feel extremely comfortable, and personally I found the footwell to be extremely spacious. It was wide, tall, and it didn't feel enclosed at all. For reference, I'm 177 centimeters or 5'10", and this bed was more than adequate. Overall, this was hands down the comfiest experience my wife and I have ever had whilst traveling on a plane. Both my wife and I are lucky enough to be able to easily sleep on planes, even whilst in economy class, so we both got around 6 to 7 hours of sleep on this leg of the flight. We both hit the Do Not Disturb button, which changes the color of your seat number display to let the flight attendants know that you don't want to be disturbed. Next, let's talk about entertainment. The TV is a 21.5-inch screen, which is huge. It is touchscreen and I found it to be extremely responsive, but if you don't want to use that because you do have to shift quite forward to be able to reach the screen because you're so far away, then there's also a controller on the side of the well as well. The Oryx Entertainment System is great with lots of movies, TV shows, and games. The remote was actually really intuitive to use and responsive. Sometimes with controllers, I find that there can be a bit of a delay between pressing the button and it actually doing what you want it to do. Once we landed in Doha, we disembarked, and given that we only had a short 2-hour layover before our next flight to Madrid, we decided to head straight to the Al Marjan Lounge. This lounge is truly another level when compared to the previous experience in Melbourne, and it's been touted as one of the best business class lounges in the world, and I can definitely see why. Combining an epic scale occupying a whopping 10,000 square meters of floor space, it holds a soothing vibe with excellent dining options, offering both a buffet and an a la carte menu and superb service. The lounge succeeds in almost every aspect. Inspired design features and clever use of partitions provides unexpectedly intimate nooks in the lofty space. Beneath the mezzanine level restaurant delivers even more seating on the huge windows overlooking the tarmac. This area is understandably popular and is known to get extremely busy. Overall, this business lounge in Doha is dazzling. The scale of the space, the attention to craftsmanship, and thoughtful design are all brilliantly executed. I'm actually a little bit sad that we only got to experience this for a little over an hour, because shortly after, our next flight was ready to board. For our second leg to Madrid, my wife and I are seated in seats 1K and 3K, which are still both rear facing like before, but this time along the side of the plane and are closer to the window. This flight was another 7.5 hours, and on this flight we also had another 2 meals which were also absolutely phenomenal. Now, after trying out both seat configurations, my partner and I both agreed that if you're flying with your partner, we would both much prefer sitting together. Whilst you do miss out on the window seats, which provides you with some pretty epic views of the sky and engines as you fly, nothing beats getting to share such an amazing flying experience with your loved ones. Overall, this flight exceeded both of our expectations. This actually made over 20 hours in the air enjoyable, and I don't know how we'll be able to go back in economy in the future, especially for longer haul flights. Whilst this product isn't perfect by any means, as there is known to be inconsistencies in terms of the seats, with people expecting to get Q suites only for there to be a plane swap and then you get a totally different product. It happens so frequently that there's even a commonly known term for it, which is getting Qatard. Luckily for us, we didn't get Qatard, and if you're lucky enough to also get to experience Q suites, then this experience is like no other. For our return trip back to Australia, we'll actually be trying out Singapore Airlines business class product, so stay tuned for that comparison in the future.